I rise as one of the people that was on the Bill Committee, so put forward various amendments during that phase as well, a number of which we've carried forward and again laid during this reading. I was very interested in a number of the things that were said on the mission, on the purpose, on what ARIA is supposed to be about. All that we have in the bill itself is that it says, in exercising its functions, ARIA must have regard to the desirability of doing so for the benefit of the United Kingdom through economic growth, scientific innovation and improving quality of life. It must have regard to the desirability of doing so for the benefit of the United Kingdom. So it doesn't even have to do things for the benefit of the United Kingdom. It's not even written in there. So when the former chair of the Science and Technology Committee was talking about high risk, high reward, I understand where he's coming from, but I don't know what that reward means. I don't know what it looks like. The reward is not identified in any way. I'm quite happy for there to be a high reward, but I would like some idea of what that reward's supposed to be so that we can measure it against whether or not it's successful when we come forward. Absolutely.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I don't know the answer to that question, if I'm honest, what that reward will be. But it might be the next internet, it might be GPS, it might be, as we've heard from the previous speaker, the mRNA technology. We don't know, but what we do know is that if you give scientists the ability to explore an area, to fail, to report back, some of those will stick and some of those could become massive new industries of the future. The challenge, and I accept this, is then to keep those industries and that technology here in the UK spread all over the country to all our benefits.
And what we are doing is just what he suggested, is pointing scientists in a direction saying, please could you do something about climate change, please could you do something about our commitment to net zero and our journey to net zero, and then letting them go. So it's not about restricting them to exactly what... And one of the things that's bothered me throughout this is that most people seem to think that all of this agency is going to do is invent widgets. Now, science is not all about making things. It's not all about that. Thinking about climate change, one of the biggest things that we need to do in order to tackle the issue of climate change is to convince every single person to change the way that they live, is to convince every single person to make changes so that we can reach those targets. Now, we're not going to be able to do that without scientific research into how people work and what changes they will make. That's not about creating widgets. That's about making sure that we are on the right track and that we are making the right changes for people to be able to do those in their lives in order that we can have move towards net zero. So, you know, I think restricting ARIA to dealing with the most important challenge in our lifetimes is not too much of a restriction. I think there's a huge, wide thing there. And also, one of the things that really concerns me about progress to net zero is that there's an awful lot of folk are going to be left behind. There's an awful lot of these things that are being made that are going to be sold. Yeah, great, that's going to make a lot of difference to the lives of people who've already got money. People that currently got nothing are going to find it even more difficult if we approach climate change with a stick method and require these people to make changes or require them to pay more for their energy when they've already got very, very little money. Those are the challenges I would like to see ARIA tackling so that none of our constituents are left behind when we're moving to net zero. On that, I actually wrote to the Chancellor last week after a meeting with Aberdeen Climate Action about net zero organisations, and the Lib Dem amendment here suggesting that ARIA should be net zero in every year. I think that ARIA absolutely should be net zero in every year. That was one of the amendments we moved during committee, because we should be saying anything new that is started should be not adding to our carbon, the stuff that's coming out. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be adding to it. It should be reducing it at or leaving it neutral at the very least. And it is not. The government was not willing to accept that amendment in committee. I'm glad that the Lib Dems actually did put it forward, because it is so important. It's so important that we are, if we're saying that we're going to be leaders in this, if we're saying that we're going to make a difference, new organisations like ARIA should be net zero from the very beginning, and we should be committing to that, because if we're going to be net zero by 2050, everybody is going to have to make a contribution to that, and ARIA is included in that. Thinking about the scrutiny, I disagreed with quite a lot of what the member from Blackley and Brofton said, I'm afraid. But the point that my honourable friend was making about the Barnett formula was not that the Barnett formula is the best thing since sliced bread. It was the fact that we have got the rules that we have got. The rules are that there is the Barnett formula, it does exist, and we have been screwed over with regards to the Barnett formula a number of times in recent years, and we do not want that to happen in this case, because if you're going to have rules that we have to follow. We'd rather be an independent country. We'd rather not have the Barnett formula because we like to be independent. But if you're going to have those rules and the government doesn't stick to them, then there is a major element of unfairness there. So we're asking for them to stick to their own rules in this regard. We've seen it with legislative consent motions in recent times. They've completely ignored what the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Parliament have said in that regard. And they're not sticking to their rules. So we're just trying to get them to live up to that trust that they're expecting us to have in them around that. Around scrutiny and around public documents, public procurement and FOI, I was really pleased that during the debates in the Bill Committee that the Minister confirmed that during the estimates process, ARIA will have a discrete line in the supply estimates, so we will at least be able to see in any given year how much money ARIA has. And I'm not disagreeing that ARIA should have the ability to fail. I think that's incredibly important that it does, but we need to be able to have scrutiny of the money that is being spent. We need to be able to have scrutiny of the money that we are agreeing as a House to spend on this. And so I'm very glad that the Minister confirmed that. And just the very last thing that I want to say is I am hugely concerned about the Einsteins, about those people that work in patent offices and who have not been able to gain those grants. I don't think ARIA is going to fix that. I think there is still going to be that issue of if you are networked, if you are a white man in research, you are much more likely to be able to get those research grants than if you are a woman or a person of colour. But that is still going to be an issue. Unfortunately, with the lack of ability that we have to FOI, with the lack of ability that we have to scrutinise some of ARIA, we can't see what is going on with that. We cannot see whether ARIA is further entrenching the inequality that we currently have in science and technology and academia, or whether it is actually doing a good positive job towards breaking down those barriers, towards ensuring that people who live in the most deprived communities in Scotland are given the opportunity because they've got the best possible ideas, rather than because they've got the best possible friends. And I think it's hugely important that we have more scrutiny, and that's why we put forward the cronyism amendment, and that's why we put forward the amendments about us as houses approving both the chair and the CEO, because those rules will be so important, and because we are so excluded from the scrutiny process in relation to ARIA.